Some people learned so early that falling apart was not an option. So now they can hold everyone else together while barely feeling themselves. They are the calm voice in the crisis, the steady one in the family group chat, the office meeting, the emergency room waiting area. People trust them with heavy things, not because they seem untouched, but because they learned how to hide the shaking. They rarely ask for much, and when they do, it often comes out sounding like an apology. They say, "I'm fine," before checking if that is true. They answer, "It's okay," while something inside them quietly folds. From the outside, it can look like maturity. On the inside, it often feels like there is no safe place to put the weight down. That is the part people miss. Being the strong one is not always a personality. Sometimes it is an old job, a role the nervous system accepted before the mind was old enough to name it. Maybe you were the child who read the room early. You noticed tension before words were spoken and adjusted yourself before anyone asked. Maybe you got praise for being easy, quiet, mature, independent, low maintenance, helpful, understanding beyond your years. Those words can sound beautiful when you were young, but sometimes they mean nobody noticed what it cost you. Maybe there was no room for your fear, no space for your anger, confusion, neediness, or the ordinary mess of being a child. So you became careful. You learned that keeping things smooth felt safer than having feelings out loud. You learned that your sadness could burden people. Your needs could irritate them. Your questions could complicate things, and your pain might be ignored anyway. And children are brilliant at adaptation. They do not usually say, "This environment is emotionally limited." They say, without words, "I will become easier to love." That sentence can shape an entire adult life. Later, people call you grounded. They admire how much you can handle without making it anyone else's problem. But handling is not the same as being held. Endurance is not the same as feeling safe. A lot of strong people are not comfortable with comfort. Care lands in their body like something unfamiliar. When someone is kind, they tense up. When someone offers help, they instantly calculate the cost. Part of them wants relief. Another part feels exposed the moment they are no longer the capable one. Because if strength became your identity, softness can feel dangerous. Not logically dangerous, but emotionally expensive. It can stir old fears fast. What if needing someone makes you disappoint them, owe them, or lose control? So you stay competent. You answer the text, solve the problem, carry the mood, and call it normal. You become the person who remembers everything. Birthdays, deadlines, medication times, other people's sensitivities, the exact moment the room shifted. And over time, this can look almost admirable enough to hide the damage. Hyper-responsibility is often mistaken for character, but is not always character. Sometimes it is what happens when a child feels safer being useful than being vulnerable. This is why strong people can feel tired in a very specific way. Not just physically tired, but tired of never getting to be uncomposed. They do not always know how to collapse. Rest sounds simple until your body associates stillness with guilt. You finally sit down and your chest does not soften. It starts scanning. Did you forget something? Is someone upset? Did you earn this break? And what will pile up while you pause? That is not laziness failing. That is conditioning speaking in the language of urgency. If you grew up around emotional instability, rest could feel irresponsible. Someone always needed something, and someone had to stay alert. If you grew up around emotional neglect, rest could feel pointless. Nobody was coming to notice your exhaustion anyway. So you learned to keep going past your limits. Then adulthood rewarded you for it just enough to make the pattern harder to question. You became dependable. People described you as solid, resilient, selfless, and surprisingly calm under pressure. And some part of you probably liked hearing that. Not because it healed anything, but because it made the burden sound meaningful. If your pain turns into usefulness, at least it has a purpose. At least there's a reason you became this way. But that bargain has a cost. The more your worth attaches to strength, the more terrifying it feels to be ordinary and needy. So you might smile while drowning. You might keep showing up while secretly resenting everyone who gets to need more than you do. Not because you are cruel, because deprivation can make tenderness and bitterness live in the same body. You want to be generous. You also want someone to notice that you are exhausted without being told. That silent wish is common in people who had to grow up early. They became fluent in reading others and almost illiterate in asking directly. They know how to anticipate. They do not always know how to receive. That is why a simple question can feel strangely hard. How are you feeling sounds easy until your whole history interrupts it. You may know what you think. You may know what needs to get done. But knowing what you feel right now in your body without editing it for safety is another skill entirely. Many strong people had to skip that class. They became interpreters of everyone else's mood. Their own inner world got pushed behind function, timing, and survival. So when someone loving asks what is wrong, there's often a long pause, not because nothing is there, because too much is there, and it all arrives tangled, late, and difficult to trust. This is one hidden cost of always being the strong one. You can become deeply reliable and emotionally distant from yourself at the same time. You might know how to soothe a friend in 5 perfect sentences, then go blank when trying to explain your own hurt. You might defend other people's boundaries beautifully, then feel sick with guilt the moment you set one yourself. You might tell everyone else to slow down, then call yourself weak for needing the same mercy. That double standard usually has roots. Somewhere early, your needs got framed as too much, inconvenient, dramatic, or simply invisible. So now even healthy self-protection can feel selfish. Even basic limits can feel like letting people down. You said no, then rehearse the entire conversation in your head. You spend the evening feeling guilty for choosing your own capacity. You disappoint someone a little, and your body reacts like danger is near. This is what happens when approval once felt tied to safety. Strong people are often carrying an old equation. If I stay useful, connected, and unproblematic, I will be okay. The problem is that equation follows them into rooms where it no longer belongs. Relationships, marriages, workplaces, friendships, even love itself. So they overfunction. They explain too much, support too much, forgive too fast, and ask for almost nothing. Then one day they feel strangely empty. Not because they are heartless, but because mutuality never really formed around them. People got used to their competence. They started handing the strong one more without realizing they were handing them a life of emotional loneliness. Sometimes the strong one helps create that misunderstanding. They make struggle look so seamless that nobody sees the unpaid emotional labor. And that is not manipulation. It is often an old reflex. If being visibly overwhelmed once led to dismissal, shame, or chaos, invisibility can feel cleaner. It costs less in the moment. But years of self-erasure become a quiet kind of grief. You start wondering why nobody really knows you. The painful answer is often this. They met the version of you that knew how to perform steadiness, not the one still aching underneath. That ache can show up in strange places. In the bathroom after a family dinner, in the car after helping everyone move, in the kitchen after saying, "No worries." It can sound like numbness, or irritation that seems too big for the moment. It can look like canceling plans because your body feels heavy, or crying only when nobody is around to ask questions. Sometimes it looks like success, a polished life built by someone who never learned the difference between discipline and self-abandonment. That is another reason this pattern hides so well. Strong people can be high-functioning for a very long time. They meet deadlines, remember details, care for others, and keep producing. Meanwhile, their inner life gets reduced to maintenance. They are not asking, "What do I want?" They are asking, "What is required, and how fast can I do it?" After enough years, desire can start to feel embarrassing. Preference can feel indulgent. You may not even know what kind of rest restores you, only what kind of effort keeps everyone else comfortable. This is why being the strong one can create a strange loneliness in relationships. You are present, loyal, thoughtful, and still somehow unseen. People may love you sincerely, but if you only reveal your polished coping self, they end up loving your adaptation too. Then kindness becomes confusing. Someone offers to carry something, and you say, "I got it," before thinking. Someone asks what you need, and your mind goes blank, not because you have no needs, but because access to them got buried under usefulness. Someone stays gentle with you, and you do not relax. You start waiting for the moment the gentleness turns into disappointment. That waiting is important. It tells you strength was never just a preference. It was protection, a way to reduce unpredictability, reduce shame, and reduce the chance of meeting people who could not meet you. And to be fair, it probably worked for a while. It may have helped you survive a childhood that asked too much too soon. It may have made you the sibling who kept peace, the student who never caused trouble, the partner who senses everything, the employee who never drops the ball. Those are real capacities. They deserve respect, but not confusion. Because survival skills can look impressive and still be costly. A child becoming emotionally overdeveloped is not the same as a child feeling safe. That is the real reframe here. Being the strong one may have looked like maturity, but part of it was adaptation under pressure. You were not born wanting to carry everyone. You learned that carrying people made belonging feel more secure. You were not born ashamed of your own needs. You learned to treat them like disruptions. You were not born disconnected from your feelings. You learned that awareness without permission can be unbearable. And none of this means your strength is fake. It means the story is more honest than simple praise ever allowed. Yes, you are capable. But capability built in emotional scarcity often comes with hidden hunger. Hunger for rest without guilt. Hunger for relationships where you do not have to earn tenderness by being endlessly composed. Hunger to be asked twice. Hunger to not be the mature one for one full day. This is why some strong people feel unexpectedly emotional when someone truly sees them. Not flatters them, not admires them, but notices the strain. The moment can feel almost unbearable, because being accurately seen can touch the grief beneath competence. Grief for the child who became easy to manage. Grief for all the times composure was rewarded while aliveness went unattended. And still, this is where something gentler can begin. Not by rejecting your strength, but by loosening the rules around it. Real strength is not constant self-denial. It is not emotional invisibility with good posture. Real strength includes truth. It includes saying, "I am tired," before your body has to scream it. It includes letting care in without turning it into a transaction. It includes boundaries that do not need a courtroom defense. It includes answering slowly when someone asks how you are. It includes admitting you do not always know yet. That pause is not weakness. Sometimes it is the first honest thing you have done all day. And maybe that is the shift. The strong one does not need to disappear. But the role may need to soften. It may need room for mess, uncertainty, receiving, and the small dignity of being helped. Because the goal is not to become fragile. The goal is to stop confusing exhaustion with identity. To stop calling self-erasure maturity. To stop calling numbness discipline and loneliness independence. You are allowed to be reliable and still have limits. You are allowed to be loving without becoming emotionally unpaid labor. You are allowed to have needs that do not arrive wrapped in usefulness. You are allowed to matter before you become impressive. And if this lands somewhere deep, it may be because you were praised for surviving in ways nobody should have had to. You were called strong when you really needed support. So if being the strong one has started to feel heavy, that does not mean you are failing. It may mean you are finally telling the truth. The truth is simple and hard. Some people did not become strong because life felt safe. They became strong because softness had nowhere to go. And healing often begins the moment that softness is finally allowed to exist.